Okay, so as I mentioned, we'll do an upside down day today. So we'll do the teaching, and then you'll have your meditation practice to practice the teaching. So last week we did Majjhima Nikaya 19, which was two kinds of thoughts, where the Buddha divided his thoughts into wholesome ones and unwholesome ones, and then did his best to let go of the unwholesome ones. And today's teaching is the next teaching in Majjhima Nikaya. Majjhima Nikaya is the collection of middle-length sayings of the Buddha. So, and it's called How to Get Rid of Thoughts, or How to Stop Thinking. So the first one was dividing your thoughts into the two types, and now this will be how to stop the first type, the unwholesome type. So I have a translation by Bhikkhu Bodhi, and I have a translation by Ajahn Sujato, and I like parts of each. So I'm just going to screen share, if I can find it. Oh dear. Here it is. Now, did that show up to, it's when I've lost your, so Heather, can you see that or not? No. Okay, let's go back and try and screen share again. Yeah, it's just giving me these choices of things. I don't know what they are. Okay, I guess we're not. This is too complicated. We'll forget it's doing something weird today. So we're just going to forget about that. You won't see it, but I will. Okay, so Majjhima Nikaya 20, how to stop thinking. And I'm just going to change in Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. It's bhikkhus because he's talking to the monks. In this one, Bhante Sujato is more inclusive, and he talks about mendicants, which includes monks and nuns. And I'm going to change it to meditators because it's for us lay people today. So at one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. There, the Buddha addressed the meditators. Meditators, Venerable Sir, they replied. The Buddha said this: meditators, a meditator committed to the higher mind should focus on 5 foundations of meditation from time to time. What 5? Take a meditator who is focusing on some foundation of meditation that gives rise to bad, unskillful thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion. That meditator should focus on some other foundation of meditation connected with the skillful. As they do so, those bad thoughts are given up and come to an end. Their mind becomes stilled internally. It settles, unifies, and becomes immersed in samadhi. It's like a deft carpenter or their apprentice who'd knock out or extract a large peg with a finer peg. In the same way, a meditator should focus on some other foundation of meditation connected with the skillful. So a common thing would be just to go back to your breath. Like if your breath was your object of meditation and you've got lost in some disturbing thoughts or whatever, just come back to your breath. If it's anger, then a very skillful, wholesome thought to bring in is metta. So spreading metta. Yeah, something like that. So the first one is just substitution. Substitute the distressing thought for something that is wholesome. So say you've done that. Now, suppose the meditator is focusing on some other foundation of meditation connected with the skillful, but bad, unskillful thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion keep coming up. They should examine the drawbacks of those thoughts. So these thoughts are unskillful, they're blameworthy, and they result in suffering. As they do so, those bad thoughts are given up and come to an end. Their mind becomes stilled internally. It settles, unifies, and becomes immersed in samadhi. Suppose a woman or man who is young, youthful, and fond of adornments. If the corpse of a snake or a dog or a human were hung around their neck, they'd be horrified, repelled, and disgusted. In the same way, meditators should examine the drawbacks of those thoughts. Yeah, so I mean, the first thing you can do is just examine your, do a little body scan, because usually when we're having distressing thoughts, we're like clenching or tensing somewhere, basically not feeling good. So the first thing you can do is focus on just, realizing how you're not feeling good in this moment. You're suffering in this moment. And then you can also look at, like, especially if it's anger, you could look at what could happen if you actually carried out that anger, yelled at somebody or, did some petulant act, just all the distress that it would bring into your life if you carried through on that. So that would be examining the drawbacks. Okay, back to the Buddha. Now, suppose that mendicant is examining the drawbacks of those thoughts, but bad, unskillful thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion keep coming up. They should try to ignore and forget them. As they do so, those bad thoughts are given up and come to an end. Their mind becomes stilled internally. It settles, unifies, and becomes immersed in samadhi. Suppose there was a person with good eyesight and some undesirable sights came into their range of vision. They just close their eyes or look away. In the same way, a meditator, and then just ... those bad thoughts are given up and come to an end. Now, I found this particular one always kind of difficult, because how do you just stop? Like, how do you just metaphorically close your eyes, when you've got thoughts in your head? And Ajahn Sona, one of his things that, was to like distract yourself. He said, go open a drawer that needs tidying and just, focus your attention on tidying that drawer or a closet or something. Ayahimsa sent me a little excerpt from Bhikkhu Analayo's book, Perspectives on the Satipatthana. And I'll just read what he says. He said, this method just sets things aside for the time being until the mind has recovered sufficient composure in order to be able to see things in their proper perspective. It is not a form of escapism. On the contrary, it is a means for calming the mind that is in the grip of an obsessive thought pattern. Tell yourself that now is not the time to deal with this issue at hand, and that one will do so later when conditions are appropriate for doing so. But still, our mind has to go somewhere. We have to put it somewhere. So, like maybe Ajahn Sona's idea is good, like go give yourself a little task to do, where you can distract yourself, because you've already tried to substitute wholesome thought. You've already tried to look at the drawbacks of hanging on to this thinking, and that's not working. So maybe just take a break and go clean out a closet or something. Get your mind elsewhere. Yeah. Okay, so let's say you've done that. Now, suppose the meditator is ignoring and forgetting about those thoughts, but bad, unskillful thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion keep coming up. They should focus on, now he says, stopping the formation of thoughts. I like Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation of stilling, because, this is what we're doing every time we sit down to meditate, is to still our mind, and it's a process. So stopping kind of gives me an idea of like, just put on the brakes and stop, but it takes time. So I like the translation of stilling, sort of gradually stilling. As they do so, those bad thoughts are given up and come to an end. Their mind becomes stilled internally. It settles, unifies, and becomes immersed in samadhi. Suppose that a person was walking quickly. They think, why am I walking so quickly? Why don't I slow down? So they'd slow down. They'd think, why am I walking slowly? Why don't I stand still? So they'd stand still. They'd think, why am I standing still? Why don't I sit down? So they'd sit down. They'd think, why am I sitting? Why don't I lie down? So they'd lie down. And so that person would reject successively coarser postures and adopt more subtle ones. In the same way, a meditator would give up their thoughts. So this analogy, I think, really shows this like gradual stilling process. And again, this is one, like for myself, I mostly use just number 1 and 2. And I've always found number 3 and 4 sort of a little harder to grasp. But one of our fellow meditators gave me an example that really helped me understand this number 4. She had a relative who was ill, and her mind was just like freaking out about all the horrible things that could happen. And so she realized, that this was very distressing to her, what her thoughts were doing, but none of the other steps of stilling her mind worked. And so she figured, okay, my mind has to like be busy, but like instead of running, how can I have it sort of walk? And so she gave her mind the task of sorting out, okay, what could she realistically do to help her relative, like phone social workers, phone the doctor, organize this, organize that. So she gave her mind this sort of busy tasks to do. And then going from walking to standing, maybe she switched to a different thing, like figuring out the week's grocery list or something. I can't really remember. I remember the first step that she gave me. I've forgotten her example, so I'm just making up other examples here. And then maybe to sit down, maybe she sat down to meditate and gave her mind a busy meditation object, like looking at the 32 parts of the body. So that was a lot of thinking. And then maybe to lie down was going back to breath meditation. Anyway, I thought that was a lovely example of how, gradually slowing from running to walking to standing to sitting to lying down, like as a metaphor for stilling your mind. So that's step 4. Now, suppose that meditator is focusing on stopping the formation or stilling the formation of thoughts, but bad, unskillful thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion keep coming up. With teeth clenched and tongue pressed against the roof of the mouth, they should squeeze, squash, and crush mind with mind. As they do so, those bad thoughts are given up and come to an end. Their mind becomes stilled internally. It settles, unifies, and becomes immersed in samadhi. It's like a strong man who grabs a weaker man by the head or throat or shoulder and squeezes, squashes, and crushes him. In the same way, a mendicant with teeth clenched and tongue pressed against the roof of the mouth should squeeze, squash, and crush mind with mind. As they do so, those bad thoughts are given up and come to an end. Their mind becomes stilled internally. It settles, unifies, and becomes immersed in samadhi. So I often think about this one as if you're angry and you're just wanting to blurt something out that's really going to get you into trouble if you did so. So then you just like clench your teeth together, stick that tongue up on the roof of your mouth, clench your lips together, and then get out of the energy field of that person you're with as soon as possible. And there's always the excuse of going to the bathroom, go hide in the toilet cubicle until you're calmed down. And I'll just read you Bhikkhu Analayo's comments on this one. He said this step 5 is an emergency brake. He said this does not result in any progress on the path. Nevertheless, emergency brakes have an important function in preventing an accident. So this would be preventing some really bad consequences to us blurting out something that is not skillful. So then the rest of the sutta just goes over a summary. So step 1 was to substitute a more skillful thought, like metta, or just focusing on the breath. The second one is to examine the drawbacks of the thoughts. The third one was to just ignore them, so go clean out a drawer or something. The fourth one is stilling them. So just giving your mind different things to think about that are sort of finer and like more and more subtle, gradually bringing them down. And then the final one is just clenching your teeth and your lips and your tongue so that you don't say or do anything that will cause problems. So when you do these things, the mind becomes stilled internally, it settles, unifies, and becomes immersed in samadhi. This is called a meditator who is a master of the ways of thought. They'll think what they want to think, and they won't think what they don't want to think. They're cut off from craving, untied the fetters, and by rightly comprehending conceit, they have made an end of suffering. This is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, the meditators were happy with what the Buddha said. Let's see. Okay. So let's hold off on our discussion of this, but I'll just open if there's any questions for clarification. And then we'll go into our meditation, and then you can practice these 5 steps with whatever arises on your meditation today. But just before we start our meditation, are there any clarification questions? Silence all around. Okay. I'll see if I can pause the recording. Okay, so I just realized there's a couple of things. One thing I forgot to mention was Bhikkhu Analayo's comments on number 4, step number 4, which was the gradual stilling, the walking, sort of running, walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. And he compared like number 3, step 3, just letting it go. It's like closing your eyes or walking away and saying, I'll deal with you later when I'm calm. And then step 4, he said, was like turning around and facing the monster, like facing the thought and saying, what's underneath you? What's the motivation? Let me see. He said here, you face the thoughts and you try and look at the motivational forces that are standing behind them. And ask yourself, why am I getting so agitated about this? Or what is it that gets me so worked up about this? So just trying to analyze it. So that's another way to look at number 4. And then when I was watching my own thoughts for our discussion, I was thinking, well, I didn't have any like bad, like immoral thoughts. So I'm just curious. I'm just going to look at the translation here again, because I hope I didn't. Oh dear, did I must have clicked it. I don't see it anymore. I'll just quickly bring it up. So if you ever want to look at the Buddha's words, you just go to suttacentral.net. And I wish I could be showing you what I'm doing here, but screen share is not working today. Okay. So I just want to see what the Pali word is for when he says bad. So he says bad, unskillful. Unskillful, because I have a lot of, my thoughts are unskillful because they're just little restless, distracting thoughts that are pulling me away from stilling my mind. So they're unskillful in that way, but they're not like bad, immoral. So they've got akusala. Well, let's see. Well, they have got papa, which is, papa is evil or bad. So the wording here is, take a meditator who is focused on some foundation of meditation that gives rise to bad, unskillful thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion. So I don't know if it's bad or unskillful, or if it's bad, unskillful. Anyway, most of my thoughts are not bad. They're just, unskillful. Yeah, unskillful. Yeah, most of my thoughts are, well, I mean, it's getting settled more and more the longer I'm away from retirement, but most of them were on planning. And yeah, and it's just unskillful, because if my goal in sitting down to meditation is to still my mind, and my mind's wanting to be entertained and wanting to think about this or that or plan or whatever, then it's preventing that stilling of the mind. Anyway, that might be a good thing for us to ask the next monastic who comes about that wording. Okay, so open this up for discussion about what happened in your last half hour of practice, and what methods did you use? Were they successful? For me, yeah, just with the little restless thoughts just flicking here and there, my step one was like substitution, just coming back to the breath, because I don't want to get into a big analysis, or I don't feel I have to have some kind of an antidote like metta, when it's just a little frivolous, fleeting little thought. So for me, that's just coming back to the breath. And then when it's planning, I guess I don't do a substitution for a wholesome thought. I just go straight to step two, looking at the drawbacks, and I'm just looking at the drawback of how it's preventing me from stilling my mind. So those were really the only two things that came up for me this past half hour. Good. I found myself thinking about step four. I was thinking about step four and remembering just after my husband died, how my mind was in turmoil, and it would go into planning, trying to sort things out. And when meditation worked, then the next step was really metta for myself, metta for others helping me, and so on. So that seemed to be going from running to walking with the planning, and then standing with the metta. And then I used to eventually kind of get into almost a mantra of
here, now, here, now. So that would be the fourth step. And once in a while, we could actually then focus on breath, but not very often. But it was that kind of gradual stilling, moving from turmoil to at least focusing on words that were helpful and sometimes on breath.
Great. Yeah, I love another lovely example of the gradual stilling. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else like to share or make comments on this teaching of the Buddha?
I will say, Gamita.
Yes.
So I went in, I had my experiencing pain in my back. So I just went there. Like just breathe into it, breathe it, like just be there with it. It was quite releasing, and then it just went away. And then the other one was using the word peace, just kind of as a reminder, why am I doing this, I guess. Just brings me. And I know in the past with severe thoughts, I've walked and repeated like the equanimity sayings or a prayer, like just over and over and over and over, just to keep my mind off of the distressing thoughts.
Yeah, so that sounds like step one, like substituting a wholesome.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, the other one going into your back pain, that's more the holding technique. So that's not so much, it's sort of a different category, because you're not trying to stop a thought there. You're trying to skillfully deal with the pain using the holding technique. So that was wonderful too.
Yeah, I usually try to, I don't want to get into analysis of what my thought is about, but I try to go to like, which hindrance is this that's arising? So sort of like looking at the root of the thought while I'm in the thought. So just noticing, restlessness, worry, planning. So the label, I guess I call it the labeling technique. And then it's useful for me sometimes to notice how that's manifesting in my body. So when I'm the restless in my mind, I can sometimes actually feel my body just tensing up, like wanting to get up, wanting to move, wanting to run into the kitchen or whatever it is, that. So sometimes it's helpful for me to then go into my body and just do a deeper breath. And it's like, just that relaxing brings me back to that stillness, I guess I'd say. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I'm not meditating, like when I'm a good example is out hiking. So I'm out hiking and then I'm planning and this and that and that and this. And if I get off in one of those tangents, I often do what like Heather's mentioned about just saying, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may I let go. Like sort of the mantra substitution. Yeah, substitution.
Yeah.
And then like you have mentioned before, Sangamita, about noticing this isn't serving me. Like this thought is causing suffering. Do I want to suffer? And sometimes I do, there's sometimes those days where I'm like, yeah, I deserve to suffer today. But generally, it's like, no, I don't deserve to suffer. And how just seeing the implications of that thought. how that thought will cause the suffering, and to take it down the path of, wow, this is really unskillful. And why am I doing this? You know, but then sometimes I just have to watch that I don't get into too much analysis, because then I'm down the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it depends if I'm meditating or if I'm just doing daily life. Different techniques depending on the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you for that. I think you covered quite a few of the different steps. I think you started with at least Bhikkhu Analayo's analysis of step 4, which is looking at the motivation, like looking at the hindrance that's behind there. Yeah. And then going into the body, that's part of the holding technique. I'm not too sure where the holding technique, if it fits into this or not. But, you know, I mean, the Buddha gave so many different teachings, you know, to fit different personalities and different situations and whatever. So, yeah, I don't think we have to be too rigorous in figuring out, you know, is it in this schema or not? It's just, is it skillful? Is it helpful? Yeah.
Yeah, because I can easily go down that road of, oh, which step is this? Is this step 1? Is this technique 2? Is this? And then I'm spending my whole time, because my brain is analytical, analyzing. Yes. Yeah. So it's just try not to go down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where I was today.
Yeah. I mean, the Buddha is hilarious at times. Like, he's got all kinds of suttas where he says, this is the one thing you have to know. And then the next sutta is, this is the one thing you have to know. And it's something different. And then the next sutta is, this is the one thing. So he's just given us a whole basket of skillful means. So pick what works for you.
Ursula, I love the question, do I deserve to suffer? I haven't heard that before. It's like, do I deserve to suffer right now? I love that. Like, then it's so clear. And I also really like the naming, because sometimes it just pops. If I go planning, ruminating, whatever it is. So it's so gentle to let it go. So yeah, but that, do I deserve to suffer right now? And then sometimes, yes, I do. It's good. It's really good. Thank you.
Well, you know, that brings us to a different topic, but, you know, they say that these other realms, you know, I don't know, it's just realms other than the human realm, or like the hell realms or the heavenly realms. They said they're mind-made realms. And it's because your mind is saying, oh, I deserve to suffer. So then there you are, you're reborn into a hell realm, because that's what your mind thinks you deserve. So that's why it's so important. Like, step 1 in our whole gradual training is sila, morality, you know, so that we don't go down that route of thinking, you know, I deserve to suffer, and then you end up getting reborn in a hell realm. You want to have your sila good, so that you think, oh, I've been a good person, I deserve to go to heaven. So then you'll go to a mind-made heavenly realm.
Yeah, and another example sort of along the same lines that some people here could relate to. Friend said, oh, you know, whatever's going on, he says, I deserve a drink. And I'm like, I deserve to be sober. And he's like, wow, you're right. You know, it's what we, I don't know what the reward of the day is, shall we say, right? The reward of the day for me is sobriety. The reward of the day for somebody else that's had a hard week at work would be a drink. You know, it's how we or our rewards, like, oh, I'm going to reward myself with a dish of ice cream. Well, how about rewarding yourself with a spinach salad? You know, it's what we focus on. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay, Leslie.
Somewhat along those lines, I stumbled upon a guided metta meditation by Bodhipaksa, I think. And instead of starting off with, may I be happy, he started with, I want to be happy. And wow, I mean, that really hit me, that to let myself think, I want to be happy. It's more direct, and it actually got further than all the polite little, please, may I? No, I want to be happy. And in fact, I think I deserve to be happy.
Yeah, you see, so that will be, the chanda instead of the tanha. I mean, I guess depending on how, if our happiness is coming from developing the happiness from within, then that would be the desire that's translated as chanda rather than tanha, which is the running after the impermanent sensory satisfactions for our happiness.
Just realizing that there is a desire to be happy inside oneself. I think it's an important step.
Yeah, well, it's why, why are we on this path? We're on this path because we want to let go of suffering. The Buddha says, I teach one thing and one thing only, that's suffering in the end of suffering. And what's the absence of suffering? It's happiness, it's joy, it's peace. So we all have the desire for that. That's why we're on the path. And that desire is chanda, which is different from the tanha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is considered the desire that, helps us to progress along the path. Maybe at the end you let go of it, but it's a necessary ingredient.
And of course, the rest of the chant, I suppose, is I want to be healthy, I want to be peaceful. And it's all building a desire for positive states, for skillful states.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as long as the desire for healthiness is got a good load of reality to it, that we're all going down the road to old age, sickness, and death.
But there are many times when we think ourselves, when I don't know about you, but when I think myself into ill health and create
we don't want to do
fictional aches and pains and stuff.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. Anything else, or should we just sit for another 10 minutes before our closing? Okay, how about a nice 10-minute sit to bring us to the end of our meeting? So I'll end with metta. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be loving. May you be calm. May you be safe. May no problems come to you. May no difficulties come to you. May no harm come to you. May you meet with spiritual success. May you have the patience, the courage, the strength, the determination, the inner clarity and the wisdom to meet and overcome the inevitable problems in life, to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties in life, to meet and overcome the inevitable frustrations in life, and to meet and overcome the inevitable failures in life. May the whole of our hearts be filled with loving friendliness. May every cell of our bodies be filled with loving friendliness. May every level of our consciousness be purified by loving friendliness. May we build a healthy, happy aura of loving friendliness all around us, through which no evil thought, word, or intention, or any form of harm may penetrate, but from which loving friendliness may radiate in all directions. And may we be protected. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Lise, Blair, Kelly, may all beings be well and happy. Thank you, everyone. Nice to see you, Jonathan.
Nice to see you too. See you later.
Bye. Bye, everyone.